Patreon exclusive live. So lately I think Patreon has developed a way to do live streaming directly from the Patreon site. So I keep running into that as being an option, and it confuses me every time because then I can't quite figure out how to get the camera to work right. It's a little bit different to do it inside the Patreon app or whatever. But I think I might experiment with it one of these days because it seems like that would be a more direct way to do this. Although then I don't know if I'd be able to post them on YouTube after. So maybe I'll stick with this. I'm not sure. But because I have to post from my phone, because that's where I'm doing the live, I sometimes forget how to restrict the tiers to just the $8 tier and above. So I'm actually not totally sure if these live streams are accidentally being like available for everyone. So if that was the case last Friday, and if that's the case today, then I guess if anybody else wants to join, we'll just consider it like a free sample into this tier selection or something. And then next time, I think I'm going to start a little bit earlier to make sure that I know how to do all of the technical elements correctly, because I don't know, it always takes me a little longer than I think that it's going to figure out how to do that. So anyway, let's get set up over here on my little astrology app. Make sure it's set to, yep, September 3rd, 9:51, perfect. We're actually at a Libra rising right now, with the ascendant of the chart just having passed Mars in Libra. So some frustrated technical difficulties maybe is a little bit funny. Let's see, Mercury is in Virgo in the 12th house with the Sun and the North Node. We've got Venus and Leo in the 11th currently because of this, how this chart is configured. So that's neat. It is Mercury's day, and it is Jupiter's hour. So it's a good day to ask about, or it's a good moment, I should say. It's a good moment in time to ask about both technical, precise, academic, inquisitive, analytical questions, and also how we apply that data, that knowledge into something more that facilitates both spiritual and material growth, abundance, goodwill, right? How do we expand that into something that is useful? Those are the kinds of combinations I think we get with Mercury and Jupiter. And it's interesting too because Mercury and Jupiter don't necessarily get along that well in the astrological scheme, only because, Jupiter's in detriment in both of Mercury's signs, and Mercury is in fall and detriment in Pisces. And in detriment in Sagittarius. So the reason being that Mercury is really good at, in Virgo, distilling, refining, coming up with the correct answer or an answer that helps us to optimize systems and ways of thought. And in Gemini, we're really good at collecting data, collecting information, asking people about their opinions, experience, expertise, interviewing, right? Giving and receiving data. And then Virgo condenses that into some kind of conclusion, digests it, figures out what it's actually saying, that kind of thing. It's the listening capacity of Mercury. And the reason that they don't tend to do that well in Jupiter's signs, I think, is because Jupiter is concerned with bigger questions. It's not really how many people between 2025 and 2028 have increased or decreased their job or whatever. It's not that. It's more more philosophical, more widespread, and I don't know how to exactly explain it, but it's more how do we be there for our fellow man in times of both prosperity and in times of scarcity? And what does it mean to have faith that things will work out, right? Mercury wants facts and data points, things to put together. And Jupiter is kind of insisting, just take it on faith, right? We're all connected and we're all gonna figure out a way to bloom together in this beautiful forest of life. And Mercury's well, where's the fact? How do you know that? Where's the evidence? So they can butt heads occasionally. Mercury, I think, is more concerned with the technical, the precise, the exact, and Jupiter's kind of well, it all evens out in the wash, right? Well, the important thing is the lived experience and connection of everyone and everything, which I think, I tend to, I appreciate both, right? But I can definitely see how there's a conflict of interest as far as those planetary combinations. But, I have Jupiter in Virgo in a Mercury ruled sign. So It can be difficult. Like I've had to systematically build my faith by collecting data points, essentially by experimenting, by researching a lot of different, and mine's in the ninth house. My Jupiter is in Virgo in the ninth. So of course I researched a lot of like different philosophies and mythologies and religions from other cultures and tried to find a through point and like, what do these things all have in common? And what are we really getting at here? What is the utility of asking ourselves these kinds of spiritual, uplifting, wider questions? And so it really was a mercurial approach to Jupiterian topics, and that's kind of how I'm used to exploring with like faith and religion and things like that is you know, I do believe on faith that there is truth here, that there is benefit and utility to asking ourselves those questions. And then I go in and I look at all the details and I look at all of the different ways that it's been done before and like, what is it really saying, right? Like what's at the core of this philosophy? So anyway, so that's my personal approach. Since we use the nameless one for Friday, why don't we use Ostara in the meantime? I'm going to ask for a message from Mercury filtered through Jupiter because it's Jupiter's hour currently. And I'm actually going to do a split view really quick on my iPad over here so that I can be aware when the planetary hour changes, because last time that kind of became relevant. It was the moon's day, the moon's hour, and we started off talking about feelings, and then Saturn, it became Saturn's hour, still the moon's day, but Saturn's hour. And things got a lot more like face the reality of the situation, you know? Although I will say at that time, the moon was in Capricorn, where she still is, technically. She's at 20 degrees Capricorn. So it's making her way through the sign. And then after she goes through Capricorn, she's, oh, look at that. This is Venus in Virgo. I was just talking about how I have a Venus in Virgo, and I have a Jupiter in Virgo, but my Jupiter and my Venus are like conjunct. So both benefics are struggling together. We'll keep that. That feels fun. Anyway, okay, message from Mercury, filtered through Jupiter. I think that was a sign to not lose focus. Let's get back on track. Look at that. Love these cards. These are some of my favorite, all-time favorite cards to see spill out of the deck, so that's nice. Aw, that's so great. Wow, look at all these great cards, guys. Anyway, okay, so Mercury's message as seen through Jupiter's hour. First of all, we have this card. This is the Nine of Pentacles, also called the Nine of Coins in some decks. This is one of my most favorite cards, to be honest. It is the Venus ruled decan of the sign Virgo. Now, here's the thing. Venus is considered to be in fall in Virgo, and I've talked about this a lot, but the reason is basically, you know, Virgo is very detail-oriented. It's very quality control, especially in this decan of Virgo. It really, you know, Virgo is sterile, right? Like when they say Virgo, the virgin is defined by absence, by the specific absence of the, I don't know, so-called corruption or influence of another person, a love interest in that case, or a lover. But I think, you know, metaphorically, the through line of Virgo as virgin and also Virgo as the hermit is that both are defined by an absence of other, right? They're not influenced by the other. In the virgin's case, not influenced by the union of partnership. And in the hermit's case, not influenced by society, by the influence of all the other people, right? Virgo is very scientific, very concerned with creating a sterile kind of like neutral test. What do they call that? Like, they call that... in science, when you have like a neutral party that like doesn't have any, like a non-variable thing, what do they call that? Control group, I think, is what I'm thinking of. But anyway, we want to get the environment to be as non-impactful as possible so that whatever it is we're studying, we can kind of analyze in a vacuum. We really look at the details with Virgo and then piece them all together as we get them. So, you know, digest them, right? And then the virgin in mythology, the Virgo virgin, right? Celestial constellation, she's often depicted holding sheaves of wheat. And so this is a metaphor for like, you know, removing the wasteful parts and the grain and turning that into something that can be digested, right? And it's really about processing. There are several points of making and ingesting grains that need to be processed, right? First of all, you remove the sheaf from the grain and you process that in a mill and you turn it into flour and you add all these other ingredients in very specific ratios and a specific temperature. You create bread, you eat the bread, your body then takes that, digests that, breaks down that nutrients and saves what it needs and expels the rest as waste. And essentially all of those processes of refinement and optimization is what Virgo is known for. Virgo rules the digestive tract. It's very much about taking what is nutrient dense and expelling waste. And so this is why Virgo is associated with things like, system optimization and system implementation, right? We're trying to create a process of refinement so we can get as much as possible that is useful out of a situation. The reason that Venus is in fall here is because Venus is about love and beauty and harmony and pleasure. And if you're looking for everything that doesn't work, everything that is wasteful or is getting in the way of this like perfected sort of end result, that can get really depressing. One of the alternative phrases for describing planets in fall in traditional astrology is in depression. So the planet is seen as being literally depressed when they're in this sign. Or maybe I should say not literally, maybe more figuratively depressed when they're in this section of the zodiac, because it's not able to fulfill its core significations in a way that is intuitive and easy for it. Usually runs into obstacles. With Virgo, the obstacle Venus faces is perfection. When you're scientifically looking at refining something and trying to make it as perfect as possible, that's one thing. But how do you go and make pleasure as perfect as possible, or beauty as perfect as possible, or love as perfect as possible? These things have an element of subjectivity to them, and a lot of it is very experience-based, right? So it's one thing to create a system to optimize pleasure, but if you're so involved in creating and refining the system that you never get to experience those joys, then, was it really pleasurable, right? Or was it just kind of creating a bunch of problems when you actually could have just enjoyed something really nice? A lot of the times with Venus and Virgo, we see forgetting or forsaking the good in favor of the perfect, or we see things like, well, I want to sit down and eat this apple, but before I do that, like I should peel the apple so that it'll be nicer. And then before I do that, I should make sure that my kitchen is clean so that everything is like perfect. So I'm not distracted by any of that kind of thing while I go to enjoy this apple. And then, maybe it would be nice if, this or that or the other thing happens. So it's like creates a bunch of additional problems by trying to make the one thing as perfect an experience as it can be. And then that's, assuming, because we don't live in a vacuum, so that's assuming that nothing else comes along and ruins it anyway, right? So that's some problems that we get with Venus and Virgo. It also is just, and I once heard somebody in my astrology class made a forum, and they were listing all of the planets in fall and debilitation and making little kind of bullet point sentences for like why that is. And one of the things that they said about Venus and Virgo was like, oh, Venus goes looking for problems instead of like enjoying pleasure or something like that. And I was like, raise glasses. As somebody who natively has Venus in Virgo, I think the emphasis is being put on the wrong syllable here. And that's such a Venus and Virgo thing to go in and nitpick this kind of like diction. But I was like, it's not that Venus goes looking for problems. Venus goes looking for pleasure and beauty and love because that's what Venus does. But in Virgo, she can't help but notice the details. And if you zoom in close enough, eventually you're going to find a problem and it's going to really ruin your day. The fall part of Venus and Virgo, in my experience, is that you really do think that if you figure everything out, if you look at all the details, if you create a perfectly refined system, you might actually achieve perfection and finally be happy, right? And the idea that like, yes, this is the ultimate beauty, this is the ultimate perfection, but that actually doesn't exist. There's always something. And so for me, Venus and Virgo really comes out as an artist because, part of how I've gotten so skillful at my craft over the years is constantly analyzing my output for flaws, constantly saying like, oh, that's not good enough. The nose is weird there. That's not right. This tool isn't working as well as it could. And that process was very depressing for me because I was essentially anytime, I used to joke with my friends, it's like I make something and then as soon as I've made it, I hate it because I see all the problems with it. It never reaches that ideal vision that I had in Virgo. That Venus had in Virgo, I suppose. And so that was really difficult. Now, as I kept at it and as I further refined my skill, refined my systems, refined my tools, I am now at the point where I can produce things that I actually like for quite some time. But still, I'm always kind of trained, I have that trained eye to just see like what the problem is. How could this have been better? How could this have been more improved? So Venus in Virgo is really good for like being an art critic, being critical of media, being critical of data collection, the ways that data is used to promote certain desires and certain interests of other groups. Now, there could be other things involved with why I am particularly sensitive to when that happens, right? Because it's like that old saying, figures don't lie, but liars do figure. There's a lot of ways to interpret raw data, and some of those are colored by individual desire, and those personal biases are not usually disclosed. So it's very important to be critical of the information that you hear, even if you like what you hear, and maybe even especially if you like what you hear, because then you're susceptible to want to believe it. This is something that I think having Venus and Jupiter both in Virgo has really helped me with, because I don't really take anything on faith. I don't just believe things, right? I have to like look into it, pick it apart, find its weaknesses. And just because something is not perfect does not mean it's not valuable, by the way. But it's important that, at least to me, and how I navigate life and in my own value system, that I just don't accept it point blank, right? There's this saying, I don't know where it comes from, but it's something like, believe nothing that you hear and only half of what you see. It's this idea of like constantly remaining critical of what's going on and thinking, okay, who benefits from these assumptions that they're trying to imply, right? And what am I inferring from these implications, and why am I going there automatically? So you can see how like there's utility there, but it's not a very like intuitively pleasurable experience. I kind of enjoy the research element and the data collection, but it can definitely lead you to just be, kind of burnt out on the details before you even reach any kind of conclusion. And if you're, at some point you do kind of just have to take things on faith, right? There is definitely a place where you've gone as far as the data can carry you, and now you just have to live your life a certain way. And this is one of the ways that Jupiter is very helpful, because he's got this buoyancy to him that helps him just kind of give us that, like, well, maybe it's not perfect, but it'll all even out in the cosmic tide, right? Like, regardless of our ability to explain or dissect or refine or understand, certain things happen the way that they do, and we just have to marvel at the wonder and the beauty of it, right? Anyways. But this Venus decan of Virgo is still really nice because, especially like traditionally in tarot, it's associated with independence, especially financial independence, which is, when you get rid of all the junk, you are able to really hone in on what's important to you. And in the material suit of Pentacles, we're like, okay, we are focused on getting results. And so you do, right? You eliminate everything from your garden that is hindering its ability to thrive, and you're left with a beautiful garden, and you get to marvel at your work, right? And you get to enjoy your garden until it starts over again, and you have to get back in there and look at all the details all over again. So this is a card of system optimization and refinement for the ultimate pursuit of better or more lasting pleasure and beauty, and all of those good Venusian topics. But the reason that financial independence, there's also a certain element of loneliness to it, right? There's a sterility to Virgo and to the things that Virgo is influencing. It's a removal of stuff in order to get what is good. And that can be lonely, isolating, difficult, right? It's like, picture the mad scientist in their lab studying constantly all these things in a vacuum without ever going outside to enjoy the miracles of life as they unfold before you, right? This kind of vibe. Or the virgin, right, who is pure and untainted and whole unto herself, but has not known that union, which does come with, it's dirty, it's messy, both literally and emotionally, but you do learn a lot, and you do get a lot from, those kinds of relationships. And so on the one hand, yes, you're less whole in the idea of like, uninfluenced by other factors. But on the other hand, that kind of alchemy is essential for growth, and it's important to undergo at some point. So there's a little bit of a drawback here, but in Venus's decan of Virgo, Venus does have its place, and there's definitely a utility to being able to remove outside influences and hone in and refine on what is important to you. But yeah, in the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith card, it's a lone woman with a falcon standing in a garden. Well, falcons, prey on pests like squirrels, mice, things that would upset the garden, right? She's in control of this falcon, but she's otherwise alone. She has a beautiful garden, but she's on her own, right? It's sort of like, when you really prioritize one thing, often that comes by sacrificing other things. In the case of Venus and Virgo, that can be sacrificing, the joy and ease of a relationship or an experience for the ultimate product of whatever it is you're trying to do. But still, I would say it's an overall very positive card. It's just about, really getting in there and refining things and making things as good as possible, and knowing that there will be some waste, right? There will be some sacrifice to that. Sometimes, and like I see this a card a lot in terms of financial independence, when it's like, oh, yeah, I worked really hard to have all of my beautiful things and to have my house just the way I wanted it and to have my career the way I wanted it, but I never got to start a family, or I had to set my family on the back burner, or I don't have as good of a relationship with my husband or my children as I would like. Like those are the kinds of situations that you really see when this card gets drawn up. So it's not that it's negative, but it is towards the end of the material suit of pentacles. And so we are working towards that 10, where we've created systems. It's so refined that they're able to yield results without us having to do that much. The 10 of Pentacles is like we've arrived at that system where we just kind of get to sit back and look at the rewards and watch the next generations, make use of what we've laid the groundwork for. It's about legacies and inheritances, and also systems that are so perfected and so refined that they outlive us, right? That they can benefit entire generations after us. For better or for worse, these are the kinds of systems like, I don't know, like the ones that found countries, that outlive the people who actually founded them. So it's that sort of thing, right? It's the idea that what you put into motion, if it is perfected enough, if it's refined enough, if it kind of feeds itself enough, you'll be able to just stand back and it takes on a life of its own. And of course, there's a downside to everything. And after the 10 comes the 1, where we're at, ground zero again. And we have to be like, oh, okay, we need to start, we need to have a new situation, a new opportunity, or whatever. But anyway, so the 9 is right before the 10. So it's like we're in that process of setting up that system that will yield fruits after we're done with it. But in the meantime, well, it's kind of a slog, right? We kind of have to like get in the little details. So yeah, definitely one of those cards that's, I think it's positive. I think generally the connotation is positive because it's showing, hey, like, you're going the right direction. You're doing okay, right? We just need to kind of stick at it or stick with it and make sure that we're really focused on the specific goals that we have in mind. And then we have the 6 of Wands. So I'm just going to check really quick too to make sure that my Patreon email went out. Yep, it did. Okay, cool. That's fine. I know I don't ever know when to do lives that will like make it so people can attend, but anyway, I'm gonna drink some coffee too. So now we have the 6 of Wands. The 6 of Wands is probably one of my favorite cards in the deck to get. It's the Jupiter ruled decan of the zodiac sign Leo. Leo is the domicile of the sun, the celestial king, the light and life giver. He's not a benefic or a malefic, right? He's sovereignty. He's the ability to rule yourself, to govern yourself, the ego persona, right? Which, bear with me. Arguably, we're all kind of a collection of different aspects warring within each other in a single psyche, right? It's the reason why you can be like, oh, I kind of want to do this and I kind of want to do that. Part of me feels this way, part of me feels the other way. But at the end of the day, as far as our interactions with other people, we are one unified presence of ego, whatever that is, right? The ego is kind of at the helm, interfacing with other people and also with the internal, and then, making that alchemy work in some kind of way day to day. That's so it's not nothing, right? Our persona, our personality, it comes from that core spirit, that exact essence of self, and then it radiates outwards to create, the persona and the ego personas and stuff like that, the personality. So it's not that it's fake, it is genuine and true, but it also does have that duty of, ruling the self as though it were one united thing, when a lot of the times we're kind of messy and less clear than that, even within our each individual's head, right? Each individual's heart. We're not so black and white as just like, yep, this is me always in all kinds of, in all situations at all times. We have a lot of different rules, responsibilities, hats, but ultimately whatever our names are, we're like, yes, this is me. This is me as I interact in the world. So So that's the sun, right? The sun is considered like the spark of life, the animating principle. What moves the body is the spirit, right? So it's this idea of like, that's what the sun is. The sun rules you. The sun also can represent kings, government officials, people who rule over you, sometimes the father. It's about authority. Also, it's associated with, like, for example, the sun rejoices in the ninth house, which is called the house of the god. So yeah, right. Like, I think I posted about this too in my write-up for the Onyx Tarot about strength being the domicile of Leo, where it's like, ultimately, who has actual sovereignty or control? Is it fate slash God, or is it the individual? That's a question that we've been asking ourselves for a really long time. Certainly not everything is within our control, but at the same time, certainly there are things that are. And so figuring out where that line is becomes a big part of a person's self-empowerment, right? Realizing that there are things that they are sovereign over. One of those things is themselves. And, and whether or not you choose to comply with an external authority figure, such as a country, a father, a boss, or whatever, that's you making that choice to comply. That's you giving your power to that person or group entity. And certainly there are consequences for not doing this. And sometimes those consequences are not worth maintaining that kind of sovereignty in all situations. But sometimes, situations are different. Anyway, in the Jupiter decan, though, this is nice because the Jupiter decan of Leo is like, these are the rewards of sovereignty, the rewards of having power and having the ability to govern yourself, and to feel yourself empowered by your own conscious awareness. So essentially, assuming that there aren't a bunch of other negative cards all around you, which in this case there aren't, we're surrounded by very positive cards. Generally speaking, this card is like, oh yes, rewards, acclaim, recognition, achievement, attainment. This is like the leader, having accomplished something grand, standing before all of his what do you call them, subjects, and they're all applauding him and throwing flowers at him and going, yay, this is great, thank you for whatever it is you did, this public work project that we all love, or defending us from besiegement, from whatever, right? Like, this is, the celebrations of leadership and also the rewards of leadership. If you, for example, I don't know, are the head of a project for work and you're able to navigate through really tumultuous territory and come out on top, performing really well, everybody's probably going to be super relieved, right? Everybody got to keep their jobs. Like, yay, our wonderful leader led us through the situation. Isn't that great? And now, of course, there are heavy responsibilities that come with leadership. But in this decan, we're like, yes, this is the good part, right? We get to do good. This is Jupiter's decan. So we're not just doing nothing and taking all of the rewards. We're earning them, and we're receiving due validation, due credibility, and credit, right, to our reputation for the good that we're able to do. Jupiter is very concerned with the overall greater good, and not in like because we have to make sacrifices way. I mean, like, how do we do good, be good? What does that mean to uplift, right? Like, what's that saying? Raised tide lifts all ships, or something like that. Jupiter is really concerned with that kind of ideal, right? It's sort of doing good because you are good and being good because you do good. That sort of feedback loop. Or did I say that right? Doing good because you are good, and you are good because you do good, right? I think you get what I'm saying. But anyway, so Jupiter is very much about like mercy, miracles, faith, goodwill, optimism, abundance in heart and in body, lifting not only yourself, but all of those around you, right? There's a certain kind of like, the world is full of opportunities and I'm able to help myself and also others at the same time. So when we have Jupiter's decan of Leo, we're like, oh, and we see that and we are seen doing that and embodying that. We get, the rewards, the acclaim, the credit for doing that. And it feels really good. A lot of the times in like mundane little readings and stuff, this is like, oh, you got a promotion, you got an award, somebody praised you for something. You said you were going to do a thing, you did the thing, and now everybody is like, hey, good job, you did exactly what you said you were going to do, and we're really pleased with it. That's the kind of situation that we get with the Six of Wands. So it's, you know, it's one of my favorite cards because we love to get praised for good work. And then on the other side, we have the Ace of Coins. So the Ace of Coins I was talking about really briefly before, you know, after the 10, we come back to the Ace. And so this is a new material opportunity. It's sort of like, oh, you know, maybe I go back to school in hopes of getting a better job. Maybe I apply for a job and I get that opportunity. Maybe I invest in something and it pays off down the road. So this is kind of like those beginning stages. It's not winning the lottery. It's more like there is a new opportunity that could be powerful if it is properly nurtured. It could develop into something that is really beneficial, but you're going to have to nurture it, right? Because the suit of Pentacles is associated with years as far as time readings go. It's, you know, it's long, it's earthy, it takes forever. Things, the earth moves very slowly, right? Like tectonic plates shift usually, unless there's like, you know, an earthquake or something. It's pretty slow. It takes a long time for gemstones to form under the earth. It takes a long time to mine materials from the earth and refine them into things that are useful. So it's about toil, it's about labor, and the ways that you go about achieving that. Like, you know, education is put into the suit of Pentacles a lot because it's like learning how to do a skill so that you can better your material existence in some kind of a way. I think there is crossover as far as education between the suit of Swords and the suit of Pentacles because, you know, you are communicating, learning, thinking, but ultimately like education as an institution, as a pursuit, it's put into Pentacles because it kind of is a job, right? You're doing it so that you can somehow get something out of it that will improve your material standing. And especially if you're learning a skill, you know, like how to draw, how to garden, how to weld, right? If you're learning how to physically do something with your body, then it kind of gets directed into Pentacles. If you're just debating with somebody, then it's more of a Swords, right? Also like writing and communication, reading for the sake of reading, getting knowledge for the sake of knowledge. But if you're trying to apply that knowledge in any kind of way, then that kind of shifts a little bit more towards Pentacles, especially because, and at least in America, most people go to school to earn money, right? They want a better job. They want to better their life in some kind of way. In some kind of physical, tangible way. Unfortunately, although I kind of grieve for this fact, generally in my country at this time, knowledge for its own sake is not so much considered a virtue. I think that it is, but you know, you often will hear if you say things like that, like, oh, I want to go back to school and get a master's in, I don't know, philosophy or classical mythology, which is the thing I've said multiple times. You might encounter people saying like, well, why? It's going to be a waste of your time because you already have a job that you're doing and you're doing it well and you don't need that. So why would you do it? And it's like, well, first of all, I do think it could help me do my job better. You know, learning is always good. And when you're in a school, you're surrounded by people and environments that kind of like force you to do that. But secondly, because I want to, right? Because I want to know more about this stuff because it's fun to learn about things you're interested in learning about. But that's not really a, what do you call it? A priority in my culture at this time, unfortunately. So I think that's also why we see education as a Pentacles thing, is my point. Anyway, the Ace of Pentacles is like, okay, so like a new opportunity. So like a new opportunity that you seek. Well, we got this first, really. So it's like you're doing well, refining and getting things off the ground where, you know, we're making progress. We're seeing all of the different things that are not good that need to be pruned back in order to make a more perfected system that is nice. We're seeing like some victories, some successes in this generally. And these pruning back of this stuff that you don't need, being successful and getting rid of waste and excess yields new and better opportunities, right? Like in gardening, and gardening is such a helpful metaphor for all of the processes of the suit of Pentacles. You get rid of weeds to make room for new growth that you want, right? That is valuable to you. So instead of having, I don't know, swine cress or whatever, you want tulips, right? And the tulips can't grow where the other thing already is, or if they do, they won't grow as well because they'll be crowded, they'll be fighting for resources. So really this decan of Virgo is about pruning back all of that stuff so that what you get is what you love, that you appreciate, and you make opportunities for new, better things to come because there's space for that to grow and for that to breathe, uncrowded, uninfluenced by other factors. Like a lot of the times too, weeds, because they overcrowd things, they introduce like fungus and disease into the garden beds, and so that becomes a real big problem. Whenever there are organisms competing for limited resource, you run into issues, right? So pruning back like waste or excess, or, you know, even if you have like a really valuable resource to a garden like water, right? If you have way too much of it going in one spot, it's going to kill the garden. So this this system of this decan of Virgo is really beneficial for looking and saying like, oh, hey, where is there excess that needs to be pruned back? And like, where do things need to be tweaked or refined? How can we optimize this? How can we make it beautiful, efficient in producing beautiful effects? So yeah, so this is a good little like trajectory. And at the bottom of the deck, hidden as the hidden factor, is the Three of Coins. And the Three of Coins is about collaboration, working together. This is also Mars's decan of Capricorn, where it is exalted. So it's a very auspicious place for Mars to be. Mars generally is the malefic of aggression, violence, anger, pain, burning, also drive and motivation. Like we consider a burning desire is drive, right? It's motivating you to do something. And in Capricorn, because Saturn is seen as being excessively cold, and Capricorn is the yin element, or the receptive, so-called feminine element of Saturn, it's even more, it's slower, it's more reflective, it's more receives information, receives situations as they are. Capricorn is about structures as they are currently. And so Mars in Capricorn is the ability, you know, it really slows Mars down. Mars has an impulsive streak that can be very problematic. He's very strong and very forceful and just does what he wants, regardless of, and especially when it puts him in direct conflict with someone else's or something else's desire. So that's what Mars essentially is, right? Is relational conflict, whereas Venus is relational harmony. And they're kind of, you know, equal opposites of each other in that way. In many ways, because it's the lesser benefic and the lesser malefic, right? So, and Jupiter is the greater benefic and Saturn is the greater malefic. And when they say greater, they really just mean like closer or farther. That's all that means. So anyways, because Jupiter and Saturn are very far away from the Earth, relatively more far away than Venus and Mars. So anyway, let's see here. Okay. So the Mars ruled decan of Capricorn is good for Mars because it's able to see the system as it is, collaborate, work within that system to create things that are bigger and more lasting than what it could do on its own, right? One example I like to use is I think it's a parable actually, I'm not totally sure, but basically it's three dudes working on a cathedral. They're all laying bricks, and you ask the first guy like, hey, what are you doing? And he says, oh, I'm laying bricks. And you say, okay, that guy has a job because he's just, you know, seeing the brick and he's laying it like he's supposed to. You ask the second guy what he's doing, and he says, oh, I'm building a cathedral. And you say, oh, this guy has a career, right? Because he doesn't just see like the mundane, laborious, nothing task of laying bricks. He's like, I am working to build something that is, you know, grand and impressive. It's a career. And then you ask the third person, hey, what are you doing? And he says, I'm building the house of God. And then you say, oh, he has a calling, right? It's not even a cathedral. It's something beyond that, something greater than that. That's one of these situations that I really like. Not situation, like the working metaphor, I don't know, learning allegory for the Three of Pentacles, because it really is about like not any one individual task, but a bunch of things coming together to create something that is grand and lasting and outside of yourself. And that requires a lot of motivation, of drive, of sometimes courage, sometimes even conflict, engaging in conflict to be able to create these hierarchies of systems that work well enough to actually function, right? At some point, groups need a leader. It just doesn't work if everybody scatters to the wind and does whatever they want because they feel like it, right? You need like a plan. Saturn is really good at responsibility, restriction, limitation, hierarchy, in that way, authority. And Mars is really good at drive, motivation, courage, passion, like, you know, that go-getter kind of like, we're gonna get this done, come hell or high water sort of thing. So the Three of Pentacles is one of those situations where two malefics can potentially come together to do something that is good. But the reason that these are malefic energies and not benefic is because it is going to be, first of all, take forever because it's Capricorn, Saturn. It's going to be strenuous, difficult effort because it's Mars. It's going to take a lot of energy and potentially create conflict. And it's going to take hierarchy, which usually doesn't feel good, right? To have somebody in charge of you doesn't usually feel good. People accept that as a thing that needs to happen anyway when they work in a group because it adds order and cohesion. So it's kind of one of those situations where we give up a little bit of freedom so that we can get something bigger than what any individual could do alone accomplished. That is the vibe with the Three of Pentacles anyway. And so generally the connotation for the Three of Pentacles is very good. It's like collaboration, teamwork, working together to do something better than you could on your own. I got this card as a draw for Labor Day, right? Where it's, you know, a bunch of busy bees coming together to fertilize the flowers, which bear roots that are carrots. And so it's like this whole ecosystem that they're essentially creating. Like they get the honey for their hive, the flowers get pollinated, and we get the carrots. Also, carrots are symbols for labor because they're used as, I don't know, lures for beasts of burden, right? That's saying the stick and the carrot, the stick being the punishment, you beat the beast when it doesn't work, and the carrot being the reward. You give them a carrot to get them to do what you want to do. And that's kind of like the system of capitalism. In my current experience and opinion, it's more sticks than carrots, but you know, what you gonna do? Also, I don't like the idea of beating animals, just to be clear about that. But that is where the expression the stick and the carrot comes from. Anyway, so yeah, so we have a long road ahead of us. It's going to be kind of difficult. It's going to wear us out, take a long time, but overall, you know, we can identify where there are issues, where we need to prune back or refine. We can receive encouragement, praise, acclaim by following that direction, by making things as systematically pure as possible. This is another thing. Virgo is really associated with purity. They mean purity as in there's no gunk in the gears, right? It's like a clean operating system. Or like on your computer, if you have a bunch of like ambient data or whatever, you're supposed to purge that, get rid of all your trash and emails and all of that stuff so that like the computer operating system runs more functionally. I mean, my husband's the tech guy, not me, but it's something to that effect. It's the same thing with the whole garden metaphor, right? You get rid of the weeds, you get rid of the excess, you figure out what's not working and why, and then work to course correct. And then there is validation there's support there's like, yes, that's great, we should, right? This also can be the support of your peers. If you're trying to do something in a group, for example, you probably have the support of your peers. They give you that like, yes, let's go, we've got your back. And then it creates more opportunities than you'd have on your own. So, yeah, so that's a pretty cool little reading. So that's what Mercury and Jupiter wants to say is like, hey, you know, there might be a lot of things, but we can break it up into pieces. We can get the support of those around us and collaborate, and it will create new opportunities to create better, more efficient systems. So that's a nice little note. It's much more positive than we got for the moon's reading yesterday. And I'm going to say this right now. That makes a lot of sense because Mercury is literally in his domicile of Virgo, and in Virgo, he's not only domicile, he's also exalted. So Mercury is in a way better position than the moon was. She's still in her exile or detriment. She's as far away from the home as she can possibly be. But Mercury's in his home. So we see, and this is really cool as just like a tarot astrology overlay lesson for anybody who's interested in looking at these after the fact. We asked Mercury what his opinion of the situation is, what their opinion, what her opinion, right? Because Mercury is very traditionally not feminine nor masculine, very much liminal, very non-binary or all gendered, whichever, all of them, and so none of them, I don't know. Mercury is their own thing. Which I suppose is to say they probably wouldn't mind being referred to as he or she, but whatever. Anyway, so that's neither here nor there. The point is the opinion of Mercury, this outlook, is way more positive than the moon's because Mercury, they are literally in a better position astrologically. They're in a better position to see things more optimistically, and it's Jupiter's hour, so further influence the Jupiterian of like, hey, we can work with this, we can turn this into something valuable, we just need to break it up into pieces and work together. It's such a Jupiter thing to be like, we need to work together. Literally, Jupiter is seen as being in his joy in the 11th house. The 11th house is the house of good spirit. This is also a house of charity, of audiences, of peer groups, of people who come together for a common cause, protesters even. Anytime that you go to an event and you don't know necessarily everybody or even anyone's specific name, but you know why all of you are there, you're in an 11th house area of life. So if you go to like a convention for astrologers, right, then that's your 11th house because everyone there is linked by the common theme of astrology. If you go to a fuck Trump, no king's tyrant protest. You're there because you believe in freedom and independence and democracy and general goodness, right? So, and you're all united by the cause of getting a tyrant off the throne. If you go to, oh, I don't know, an anime convention. You're all there because you love anime, right? It's the joy of a thing. Jupiter is considered to be in his joy in the 11th house because if you're going to preach morals and, optimism and faith and goodwill and philosophy and spirituality and all the stuff that Jupiter loves to do, you have a lot more success if you're in a wide audience, right? If you're in an audience that's already receptive to you and linked with you by a common cause. So very much Jupiter loves collaboration, right? Jupiter loves to lift as many people as possible. Jupiter's oftentimes associated with just bigness, big and expansion, buoyancy, uplifting and expanding. That's all Jupiter stuff. And so Mercury here says, okay, well, we can do that if we break everything into a little tiny digestible piece, figure out where it fits, take what's good, leave what's not, celebrate and get celebrated, recognize, right? Receiving and giving recognition for what is good, what is working, and pruning back the rest, and then creating new systems, where we work together and we uplift everybody. So it's funny. The South Node is also in Virgo right now. So we do have like a draining away or a lessening of stuff when the South Node is there. And it's so funny too, because of course the South Node is in Virgo, where we're concerned with truth and facts and data refinement and digestion, and we're like critically thinking, because the South Node is saying, we're not doing any of that. Like culturally, globally, when the South Node is in Virgo so far, from my observations, it seems to be like we're burnt out on facts. We don't want to think about that anymore. We're not going to do data collection, refinement, and analyze things. We're just going to fucking go off of feels, right? Because of course, if the South Node is in Virgo, then the North Node is in Pisces. The North Node is very hungry, constantly consuming, never full. In Pisces, someone in my astrology class said it's hungry for a miracle. And I thought, oh my God, that is such a good little like phrase for the North Node in Pisces, I think, because Jupiter literally rules miracles. Pisces is his receptive, nocturnal yin element, where things just kind of are like, you're bathed in the waters of collective wisdom. And so when the North Node is there, we're hungry for that compassion. We're hungry to just be told it's okay. We're also, Pisces is associated with martyrs and, the sacrificial lamb, the spiritual leader or like Messiah figure. So it's like the North Node being there is like we're desperately hungry for someone to come save us. We're hungry for a miracle, and we're done looking at facts. We just have so many feelings that there's no time for the other stuff. But since Mercury and the Sun are both in Virgo, we do still have that, even though we might not want to look at facts right now, Mercury is in Virgo. So wherever Virgo is in your chart, you're gonna start thinking more critically, analytically in that area of life. Which, speaking of, I'm still working on the horoscopes for this, for September. I'm almost done, but not quite done. So I don't know. It's been crazy. My husband went back to school and we've been working, to get a better job, right? I think I brought up like how going to school for a job was a Pentacles thing. That's what my husband is doing. And readjusting with the kids' schedules has been so wildly different and difficult. Like I used to just be able to lock myself in the office all day and like grind out horoscopes and do commission work and then do my own, work on the decks that are upcoming and all this stuff. Now I'm having to figure out how to budget my time differently, and that's difficult for me. So please bear with me as I figure this out. If you're waiting on a commission, if you're waiting for the horoscopes, like, sorry, it's late. I'm going to send an email to people waiting for commissions too, which by the way, they are still open. I said that I'd keep it open for 18 spots and we've only filled 10. So there are 8 spots still available. I have a pinned post on my Patreon if you're interested in that. For more details, you don't have to be a member to look at it. It's public, so you can just go hop over there and check it out. Also, if you're looking for ways to support me in general through this difficult time, my Patreon is a great way to do that. I have tiers for lives that people are invited to. I have a tier for the horoscope, for spell jars. There's some for just support, for early access. I try to post all kinds of sneak previews about like decks I have coming up in the future. Oh, which by the way, you guys, I have a very exciting thing. So I've been working on this oracle deck called Acanthus and Crow, and I had this I had this very horrible, like weird fear vision where I was like, man, These cards are really detailed. I don't know, speaking of very detailed, I don't actually know if you're going to be able to see all of the details in the size that I want to make them. And Acanthus and Crow is an oracle deck, and it's also incredibly detailed, and it has words on it, even though I said I would never ever make a deck that had words written directly on it when I made the nameless one. It's funny. This is good. Things will happen quickly, hopefully. Anyway, well, I managed to talk myself out of that, or create an exception for that, because I made an entire poem that was like, you know, basically, what are those called? Couplets when they're two? I think they're called couplets. But basically, it's a set of 36 couplets that describe the 36 decans of astrology, as well as overlay onto this poem about crows, and sometimes it's magpies, sometimes it's other birds, but it's a very old nursery rhyme basically about crows. You know, 1 crow is for sorrow, 2 is for mirth, 3 is for love, 4 is for birth. It's that kind of thing. But I thought, oh, this goes really well with numerology, and so I've kind of like tweaked the poem a bit and extended it quite a lot to make it overlay onto the decans. And it's so funny because now every time I go outside and I see a bunch of crows flying, I like count them, and I'm like, oh, that's you know, it's 7 crows. This is that decan of Gemini. That's really cool, you know. So it's fun because I think having this oracle deck could be like, on the one hand, you get, you know, the same insights you would with an astrologically oriented oracle deck, because it is. And so you can overlay that onto the minors of tarot. You can overlay that with astrological knowledge, but then you can also, like, after you're done with that reading, when you go outside, and crows are some of the most, you know, widespread animals on the planet. There are crows almost every continent. So you can go outside, and when you see like 6 crows, 7 crows, up to 36 crows, you know, you can be like, oh, that's a sign from my reading because I saw that, or whatever. So I'm really excited for that potential to happen. I think it's going to be a really cool deck, a very versatile deck. And also, when you get cards in chronological order, they're going to rhyme, which is cool. So it'll, you know, I think it'll be able to create like new poems. It also has numerology in it because, you know, it's literally 1 crow is, 2 crow is, 3 crow or 4 crow or whatever, all the way down. And then I'm creating within that another section, which is kind of like the major arcana, but not quite, where I'm just going to go over, where I'm going to depict the planets, aka the gods, with the various crows. Like, for example, I'm giving, you know, Luna a pure white raven, a pure white crow. The sun is going to have a golden crow, which also, like, there are golden crows in mythology. Like, there's a 3-footed golden crow in Chinese mythology, which is pretty relevant. So that's fun. I'm going to give, you know, Venus a rainbow crow. I'm going to give Jupiter a tawny crow, like all these different colored crows. And I'm going to like make a separate poem that kind of goes in with the planets. And so you'll be able to get like a planet in a decan when you work with the entire deck. I'm really excited about it, but I had this horrible like fever dream fear that it wasn't going to read. So I was like, okay, I only have about 12-ish cards done so far, but I'm going to get a test deck made anyway, just to make sure, because I have the first cards and I had to skip ahead and do Pisces to make sure that I could actually illustrate 36 crows on a single card. So Acanthus and Crow is going to be, maybe a little bit of light would be good. I don't know. I feel like it's kind of dark in here. Anyway, so Acanthus and Crow is going to be the same size as the nameless one, which is why I pulled this out. So it's, you know, pretty substantially bigger than an average tarot deck. This is an average tarot card size. This is, I think I have, let's see, hold on. I mean, my cards are traditional tarot size. They're like a tiny, tiny, tiny bit smaller than this one, actually. Sometimes they're like a little bit bigger. Sometimes they're a little bit smaller than an average tarot deck. This is just the Pixie Smith, like, reprint Rider-Waite Smith deck. So it's very, very average size. Very average size, I mean. So yeah, so the Children of Litha and Ostara and Yule, all of them, they're what's called standard tarot size, which is about 2x4, I think, give or take. The nameless one is quite a bit bigger. So there should be more room for Acanthus and Crow with this setup. I wouldn't want to make a card any larger than the nameless one, even though this isn't super abnormal for other oracle decks that I've seen around. There's one. I have it, but I'm blanking on what it's called. Excuse me. There's a tarot deck, not a tarot deck, an astrology deck I have. It's got a white cover. Anyway, I don't remember, but I think the cards are as big as big as or bigger than the nameless one. There's also a tarot deck called something of Gaia. I know these are not helpful names, but the point is, in the oracle deck world, it's very common to have cards that are like atypical, and usually they veer on the larger size. So even though the nameless one is big for tarot standards, it's pretty average for oracle standards, but I wouldn't want to make a deck that's much bigger than that. I do have cards that are bigger than this. Like, not that I've made, but just that I've collected. I have a ton of tarot and oracle decks, probably over 100. And, you know, I love them all, but I don't really use them anymore. I mostly just use mine. Maybe that's a bit narcissistic, but I don't know. I just, I feel like I get better readings a lot of the time with my own stuff. But anyway, but I still do like to look at them occasionally because I'm always inspired by other people's art and their, you know, the take on stuff. I mean, that's part of being an artist, is just being super inspired by basically everything beautiful. All the little details of life. But at any rate, so Acanthus and Crow is going to be the same size as the nameless one. And I am very hesitant to make it any larger than that. It is technically a possibility. I could. I've seen larger cards, but I don't think that I will. But so anyway, so I've ordered the test deck. Now, because of all these tariffs and all of the horrible trading situations we've got going on, I don't know when I'm going to get it. Some people are reporting not having received stuff at all, or it's taking a really long time, or whatever. I don't know. Maybe it depends on the country even. I don't know. But I did have a test deck made. It's not with my normal manufacturer because their minimum quantity order is like over 1,000 decks. So it would be crazy expensive to make 1,000 12 card incomplete decks. It just like wouldn't make sense. And also I just don't have the money for it right now. Even if I wanted to. But, you know, it's enough to give me an idea of what it will look like in the physical, because I've noticed over my career as an artist that just, you know, something is different from the computer to the print. You notice different things. It looks different. It feels different. So it's always really important for me to make a test deck. And I thought, you know what, I was going to wait until I was done with all of the artwork before I made a test deck. That's what I try to do, because it's expensive to make those. Even if the manufacturer allows you to make a one-off test deck, they're usually like $50. So it's, you know, it's not nothing. But I was like, okay, I can't handle it. Like, it's worth the peace of mind to just know that I'm on the right track. I'm literally looking for one of these for like oh, it's okay. It's going to work out, you know, good job. It'll be fine. So that's that for our message from Mercury. And that's that for some updates on my plans. I really hope you guys are enjoying. By the way, for Acanthus and Crow, I also do, like, on my Patreon, speed paints, where as I'm playing the recording of my drawing on from Clip Studio Paint, allows you to do that. It's really cool. It like lets you make time lapse as you draw. That's one of the options. Anyway, so I do a time lapse sort of speed paint thing of my work for Acanthus and Crow, and then I voice over all of the different, you know, influences that went into that, from the classical decans to the astrological meaning to the tarot correspondence. So it's a good way to learn about the decans, I hope, as well as just to, you know, kind of get front loaded with all the information for this new deck I'm going to have produced. Hopefully, God's willing, right? And I've had all these delays with even just Ostara still. I thought the nameless one was delayed. Oh boy. At least I knew where the nameless one stuff was. Like, anyway, you can watch my last video about how shipping has been wildly unpredictable for me lately. Not a good time to be a merchant, I think, especially a small one. But anyway, we'll get through it. It'll be okay. Yeah, it is not my default sentiment, but I think that's what, you know, what else can you do, right? Anyway, so yeah, so hopefully you guys enjoy those. For Acanthus and Crow, I usually make it like an early access kind of a thing, so people who are in the early access tier get and above. So I think early access is like, I think it's $5. It might be $3. I don't remember. I can look actually really quick. Let's not give people false information. Since these Patreon lives do get eventually posted to YouTube, you might be looking at this on YouTube. Let's see here. I go to membership. I'm so bad at navigating online spaces. I'm working on it. Yeah, so early access is $5 a month there. So you get early access to Acanthus and Crow, as well as a bunch of other. I try to like spontaneously put things in all kinds of different tier categories so that everybody sort of gets some kind of value, even if you're just doing a show of support for $3 or you're just a free member just to like get updates and stuff. But yeah, Acanthus and Crow always goes early access first and then releases to the public after that. And eventually, once the deck Acanthus and Crow is actually officially completed, like the artwork is completed, I'm going to start putting those speed paint videos on YouTube as well to try to gain publicity and hype and all of that. So I don't know, hopefully that's a good strategy. We'll see. And yeah, so that'll be fun. Let's see. Dang, dang, dang. I also have an exclusive sigil tier, but so far nobody's actually a member of the exclusive sigil tier. They are members of the Patron of the Craft Spell Jar tier, which happens to also include the sigil. That's another thing too, my Patreon is structured so that every tier you get all the rewards of the tier before it, as well as something additional. So anyway, okay, well, I guess that's all I have to share, and we're about on time anyway, so I will see you guys later. Nobody showed up to participate in this live, but that's totally fine. So for those of you who are joining after the fact, if you are a member of my $8 or more Patreon reward tier, you get invited to these lives where you can come and ask the tarot any question you want. So it's basically a free reading a month if you're there and you're early. And which is good because last time I went to Pagan Pride, tarot readings were like on the cheap end, $33 for like a 10-minute reading, sometimes up to $100. So definitely, $8 a month is a pretty good deal to get a live reading if you're interested in that kind of value. Anyway, so Patreon exclusive access to come and ask the questions, and then I post it on Patreon for everybody to kind of listen to after the fact if you're interested about, more experience with tarot reading or how to interpret cards or whatever. And then after a little while, not any set date, just whenever I remember / feel like it, I make it live available on YouTube as well. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you're the last to receive it, unfortunately. So head over to Patreon. Yay, love self-plugging, so fun. Anyway. Yeah, so I guess that's all. I'll ask, let's see where we are as far as the astrology goes. So we're officially at Mars hour. So, I don't know, Mercury's day, Mars's hour. Let's ask for like, I don't know, finishing thoughts, insights, whatever. Just one thing for the collective to be aware of, I guess. I say the collective, but I guess what I mean is my audience, whoever you beautiful people are. I got time for like one more card. Oh, cool. This is much more martial. Death, the Moon, and the Three of Cups. Well, the Three of Cups is not martial, but 3 water cards too is very interesting. So Death is cool because that's Scorpio. Mars is in Libra right now, but it's going to go into Scorpio by the end of the month. So Mars will be very dignified by that point. So I guess Mars is looking forward to it. Scorpio is about dissolving, right? It's putrefaction. It's the scorpion's venom, right? It penetrates beyond the barriers of the body and corrupts, breaks down from within. Mars in Scorpio is sometimes like pathological warfare, psychological warfare. I guess I mean psychological, not pathological. Psychological warfare. It's kind of like breaking down beyond like physical barriers, getting through past physical barriers. I really see Scorpio as the shield of Mars. What do you do with a shield? You prepare for an attack and you try to like stab from around it, right? So you try to protect yourself. It's a more defensive position for Mars. It's also potentially like the most Martian of the Mars, because, Mars is of the night sect and Scorpio is the nocturnal. Scorpio is the nocturnal feminine, so-called feminine receptive element of Mars. And so, yeah, it's reflected in its reactionary tendencies. It receives input and then immediately instinctually responds. Mars is also in Scorpio associated with transformation, right? Death is about transformation. It's killing one thing and then something else, thrives in its place. A lot of the time, because, All of us will encounter literal physical death at some point, but the likelihood that death in a tarot spread is referring to that, it's not, I mean, unless you know if you know, right? If that's likely for you. But very rarely, there's a lot of other things it could mean, right? And so leaping immediately to a literal death is usually not wise because there are other meanings, and death is like a relatively rare occurrence in people's lives. Hopefully you do it once, and hopefully it's at the end of a long and well-lived life. Of course, we know that given certain situations, like for example, the genocide in Gaza, not everybody, in Congo and Sudan, all of those places, and as well as the, systematic starvation of people and poverty in America, even, not everybody gets to live to a ripe old age, and those systems should be transformed so that they can yield better protective social cares for people who are vulnerable, marginalized, and disenfranchised. I have a free sigil on my Patreon that anyone is welcome to use to that effect. But anyway, so yeah, so let's not shy away from that. There definitely is literal death occurring all the time, and sometimes those deaths are unfortunately extremely preventable, and we just don't, for whatever reason. But anyway, but also for a more mundane approach, this is, yeah, like some cycle coming to an end, something, a life of something is dying, whether that's the life of the version of you as a certain career, the version of you as, like, maybe you're no longer a child, the child is dead and the adult is born, or like your role as a mother is, is changing, right? Your children are growing up and they're moving out of the house. And so this is kind of the death of you as like a primary mothering figure. You're always going to be their mom, right? But that dynamic is going to be fundamentally changed, transformed, dead insofar as it is the matter of that is recycled into something else. Which is fundamentally how death works on the physical mercurial Virgo level. When we look at it, right, matter is neither created nor destroyed. And so when something dies, something else is born. That energy is recycled in some kind of way, broken down, which again, Mars rules things that are destructive, breaking down of flesh, of chemicals, of bonds, of whatever. And that can be used in the service of creation, right? When you break down the earth to plant the seed, that is the destruction of the earth in the pursuit of creating new growth. So destruction can absolutely be used in the pursuit of creation and for the greater good. And it's interesting because when we have like dignified malefics, like we soon will experience, it's hard to know. It's not necessarily that they get better. It's that Mars has virtues and has vices, and both of those get louder. I once heard somebody tell me, I think it was Blaze, who's Astro by Max. You can follow him if you like. He has a Patreon as well as an Instagram. I think it was him who told me this, but I'm not totally sure. My memory is so selective. I can like remember the information, but I have the hardest time remembering who said it. Anyway, something about how like dignified malefics are like people who have really strong weapons and are very well trained in how to use them, and so they understand the gravity of what they're working with, and so they're not as likely to just lash out. I think the idea too is like the planets respond based on where they are. If you feel very comfortable and in your home, you're probably going, like, people do kind of crazy impulsive shit when they feel desperate and against the wall. If you're in your own home, in Mars's case, perhaps it's like a fortified like fortress, right, with the moat and everything. He's probably less likely to flip out at the switch of the drop of a hat, because he has more defenses in place. He has more resources at his disposal. He has options. So it doesn't feel so much as struggling to survive like it might in the case of his, fall or detriment. It feels more like, hey, I'm familiar. I know all of the area. I know how to defend it. I know what it's like, what it needs, what, I'm good at it, right? This is like, I'm feeling good about this situation. Sort of like when people are dignified, right? When you are a dignified person, you're not lashing out pettily because, you're in petty little tantrums because your feelings are hurt, right? That's not dignified behavior. So when Mars is in fall or in depression, he's not his dignified self. Now, Mars is still a malefic, which means even dignified, he's fully capable of messing you up, right? He's, about anger and violence and bloodshed and war and conflict. But he's also about courage. He's about courage and drive and motivation. Those are things equally martial. So the idea is we want to bring out the best of Mars and mitigate the worst of Mars. And in Scorpio, part of that is going to be about figuring out. And by the way, let me just say, Mars is going into Scorpio on, I wrote it for my horoscope, actually. Yeah, maybe that would be faster than doing the computer. I'll just check my notes. My notes say Mercury is going, not Mercury, Mars is going into Scorpio on the 22nd of this month. So, you know, it's not like immediate, but it is happening by the end of the month. It's something to look forward to. Think about the areas in your life that are worth fighting for, and what a dignified fight for good and truth and justice and valor and courage, what would that look like in the area of life that Scorpio rules in your chart? For example, for me, Scorpio is the 11th house. So this would be like fighting for your audience, fighting for people, fighting for charities, fighting for protesters, fighting in 11th house spaces, right? Trying to do things to, I don't know, to defend or to protect those areas or the vulnerable within those areas in my case, right? So I guess what I'm saying is Mars represents both the torturer, the slaver, the rapist, the aggressor, but Mars also represents the liberator, the freedom fighter, the avenger, the, you know, the protector of justice, right? Mars is the sword, and a sword is a tool, and it can be used to defend and to attack. And when Mars is in Scorpio, he gets more options. He has more resources. So maybe you get to choose what to defend and what to attack, right? Maybe you have more of a dignified assortment at your disposal in the area that Mars is inhabiting in your chart, in your life. So that's something to think about, right? Because you might need to put something to death so that something else can grow, metaphorically speaking, in that way. So, you know, it can be as simple as that, right? Like, let's see, the chart right now is a Sagittarius rising. So it's going to have a Scorpio is the 12th house. So maybe in Scorpio in the 12th, where the 12th is like about isolation and sorrow and enemies, hidden enemies, especially also the subconscious and self-sabotage. Maybe Mars and Scorpio in the 12th can be about figuring out the ways in which we are self-sabotaging and fighting to correct those behaviors. Or maybe it can be fighting for boundaries around our alone time. Or maybe it can be fighting our own inner demons and insecurities, which lead to self-sabotage, right? So there are lots of different ways to like work with that energy, but when Mars is dignified, you have more dignified options. So that's something to keep in mind. And we also have the moon, which is so funny. The moon represents Pisces in the Rider-Waite-Smith system. And also we are about to have a lunar eclipse in Pisces on the 7th. That's the one in Pisces, is it not? I believe so. Let me check, because there's one in Virgo, but I think the Virgo one is in the 20th. Yes. Okay. Yes, I was correct. There's a full moon in Pisces, which is on the 7th to the 8th, which is also going to be an eclipse. Pisces is that, you know, the vague, wonderful waters of Jupiter that are full of compassion and uplifting and connection to everyone. But connection to everyone comes with empathy, which can sometimes mean absorbing other people's pain and anxieties and fears. It can become really overwhelming. When there's no boundary between you and other, you get to absorb the good and the bad, right? The wise and the unwise. So it's very influenceable. There's a lot of influence, right, of ambient other things coming in and permeating, right? Pisces is like the most permeable of the copermeable membranes of all of the zodiacs. Like it takes in so much from all around it, the good and the bad. And in this case, we have an eclipse. Eclipses are huge beginnings and huge endings, and they can, you know, they go on a cycle, like an eclipse cycle. It can feel like a lot. It's a full moon, so it's already going to feel like a lot. It's in a water triplicity, so it is trining Jupiter in Cancer, but Pisces was just recently re-welcomed Saturn back into the fold. Saturn retrograded from Aries into Pisces. So it's going to be complicated, right? We might feel like on the one hand, tons of emotional output, and on the other hand, very restricted in some way, hopeful in other ways. It's going to be big and probably pretty confusing around the 7th to the 8th and about Piscean topics as it relates to your house structure. I guess right now is a Scorpio rising. Sorry, I don't know why I must have been looking into the future that it said it was a Sagittarius rising. Yeah, I was looking at the month ahead. Anyway, it's a Scorpio rising, so that's why we're talking about Scorpio. But anyway, so yeah, so the things to end on is, first of all, Mars is going to be in Scorpio towards the end of the month, and before that, we have an eclipse in Pisces, where it's going to also be trining by sign whatever you've got going on in Scorpio. If you have a natal planet in Scorpio, that eclipse is going to probably be, you know, be trying that by sign, at least, depending on what the degree is. It might be really intense, or it might be a little bit more on the fringes, or a little bit more ambient, but by sign it will be trining that space. So whatever Scorpio and Pisces are, Scorpio, Pisces, and Cancer around the 7th to the 8th, those house topics are going to be like big in some way, especially Pisces, but I think it might ripple out into the other water signs by trine. So we'll see. Anyway, plus also, you know, Virgo's got that, I mean, the eclipse is like literally the opposition, so it might have something to do with a back and forth between the Virgo and the Pisces topics. And then we also have like squaring Sagittarius, so it could be interacting with Sagittarius in a conflicting kind of a way, as well as Gemini in a conflicting kind of a way. You know, could be sextiling the earth signs. So, but again, those are less intense aspects. So anyway, I think Pisces, first of all, big thing, 7 to 8. It's on the 7th to the 8th. But also maybe as well, Virgo, Scorpio, and Cancer. I think that, and you know, it's interesting because Saturn did just go back into Pisces, but by degree, it's going to be, that eclipse is going to happen closer to Jupiter than to Saturn. So I think there will be more hope than repression and restriction. But I think we're definitely going to feel that restriction that Saturn brings during that eclipse. So it's interesting. The moon will be very full. The moon will be full and eclipsed. So yeah, that'll be a time, something to remember for sure. So I don't know, maybe hang out with a friend, maybe celebrate what you've got, maybe, you know, find a way to love all of the people in your life that make your life worth fighting for. The Three of Cups is really great because it's about like intimate community. It's not like the Four of Wands, which is more about like a holiday or a graduation, a ceremony, a to-do. The Three of Cups can be as simple as like grabbing coffee with a friend, or running into somebody at the grocery store and having a nice talk with them, or just sitting with your kids and hugging them, and you know, having a good time, generally with 2 or more people, spontaneous or planned. That's just emotional, and kind of you just let yourself feel those feelings and communicate with them and lead with them. One of the interesting things is the Three of Cups rules Mercury's decan of Cancer, which, by the way, Jupiter's in. Well, I was just talking about Jupiter. Damn, look at how we get all these tarot synchronicities with the astrology. Like, I love using tarot and astrology. It's honestly, it's so golden, right? Because we already, first of all, our chart just so happened to be Mars ruled, Mars ascending. So we lead with Scorpio, which is linked to Mars, right? Because Scorpio is ruled by Mars, but it's literally a Mars rising sign right now as I'm talking. And then we have the eclipse in Pisces coming up on the 7th to the 8th. And we literally drew the moon, which represents Pisces and also is the moon. So that's very clear, like, hey, by the way, there's an eclipse coming up, maybe be aware. And then I'm saying, I literally just said, oh, you know, this eclipse in Pisces might affect Scorpio and Cancer, because Jupiter's in Cancer and Scorpio is, you know, a water sign, so by trine. And then we literally get that decan, like that very specific decan where Jupiter's, I'm saying, hey, by the way, the eclipse, you know, the moon, when it eclipses, is going to be closer to Jupiter than Saturn at that time. So maybe, hopefully, fingers crossed, I don't know, hopefully we feel more of that Jupiterian influence than the Saturnian one, although I'm sure we'll feel and experience both. And so, yeah, and so literally when I ask, oh, by the way, Mercury, you know, beautiful, wonderful, accurate, precise messenger that you are, what should we keep in mind, just as general for the collected? And we literally get the mundane astrology. The answer to keep in mind is, by the way, you have data stuff, like things are going on in the water signs. Keep an eye on that. It's so wonderful. Like, you couldn't ask it. Literally all the things that I was already talking about. Mercury's like, yeah, that's what's going on. We have a Scorpio rising. We're talking about intimate, intense, you know, changes and transformations, even within the mundane world. And Jupiter's in this decan right now. So literally, when we were asking Mercury during Mercury's day, Jupiter's hour, and Jupiter was influencing from this decan, talking about how, by the way, we can work together to do things and impact things in ways that are bigger than ourselves. I wonder if the eclipse on the 7th to the 8th is going to lay the groundwork, the inspiration for whatever it is that Mars, when he does move into Scorpio on the, what was I going to say? On the 22nd, when he moves on into Scorpio on the 22nd, if that's going to be like the effect, the action that we take, right? Maybe something around the 7th or the 8th happens that's very inspiring for good or for bad, that is very like eclipsing, right? That makes us all think about that and only that. And then maybe the 22nd is the retaliation. I'm hoping this is more like the people retaliating and not yet more monstrosities and atrocities committed by those in power, because I don't know how many more of those I can take. But hopefully it's that. I don't know. But either way, it's very interesting for sure, because we literally, I can't, oh man, every time it happens all the time. I don't want to make this sound like it almost never occurs, because it honestly happens way more often than it doesn't. I don't even know. Honestly, since I've started using tarot and astrology, and I'm being so honest right now, I don't know that it's ever not been relevant. Like, and I remember even before I was checking my tarot readings with astrology, or not checking, but, influencing, refining, you might say. I once had a friend who was really into astrology while I was really into tarot. And actually they were the friend who got me even more into astrology, because at that point I was interested in it, but I wasn't like in it, right? I wasn't like studying it. I just kind of tangentially would like look up stuff if I was curious, or I was interested in like the symbolism, the mythology, the artwork that surrounds ancient astrology. There's a lot of really cool artwork about it. I think even like the Sistine Chapel has references to astrology. So I was interested in like that element more so at that time. And then I was like, oh, hey, if I want to start like really looking into the symbols and the metaphors and all of the beautiful visual depictions, like I need to learn this system as intimately as possible so that I can like take those wisdoms and like use them in my own artistic visual journey, which is, I mean, such a Jupiter, Venus, Virgo thing to do. But I was like, yes, this is how I honor this beautiful system, is by portraying it as accurately and as accurately and as beautifully as possible. Anyway, so my friend though, after the lives would be like, yeah, it's funny because all of your tarot readings really line up with just like what the astrology says is going to happen. And I was like, damn, that's really cool. And now that I'm doing that for myself, I don't know that it's ever not been relevant. Like I don't think I've ever been stumped as far as like a connection. Because there's usually always at least like one or two. And the great thing about tarot is it's a little bit more free than astrology. So it can like use these symbols to communicate a message that is not necessarily tied to that. So it can be more widely applicable to like a perspective or a specific situation that you personally have, versus like, okay, Mars is going into Scorpio, but everyone's going to experience that. The way that you experience that is going to be specific to your natal chart, and you can get pretty accurate and hone in, but there's a lot of like overlapping things to consider, like the chart of your country, of your parents, of the moment, of your solar return, of your nativity. And so tarot can really hone in on like, okay, all this stuff is happening, but here's what is relevant to you as you need to know it going forward. Tarot is a great way to kind of like really guide that. And astrology is a really good way to like fact check the tarot, in a manner of speaking, to like, to say, okay, what could this be referring to as far as the broader context? And then tarot really gives you like the vibe that you're going to have going forward, what it looks like for you. Anyway, I don't know. Every time it happens, my point is, it is not uncommon, but every time it happens, I'm just so thrilled. Like the wonder of life. I can't explain it, but it just does work. I mean, you saw it literally happen live. I was talking about this already. I was like, yeah, it's a Scorpio rising. Oh, hey, look, this death is associated with Scorpio. Oh, look, there's a moon. Okay, well, the moon is literally about to go into an eclipse in Pisces, and the moon represents Pisces in tarot. And then, we started the live by talking about how Jupiter was in Cancer, and it was Jupiter's hour at that time. And this is the Mercury ruled decan of Cancer, where Jupiter is in the sky right now. So that's pretty crazy, I think. I think it is. Anyways, and it's one of those things too, where this is the area of life that Jupiter is so useful for, because I don't know how it works really, but it does. And I've done it enough that I can say, okay, there's a pattern here. I cannot just call it a coincidence. You could, seeing it on a live one time, so it's a coincidence or whatever, but I can't. I've done it too many times. It's always worked. I don't know. I can't explain how. That does bother me, because I've got that whole Venus and Virgo thing and the Jupiter and Virgo. I do want to know how the mysteries and wonders of life work. I want to know why everything unfolds in this beautiful and yet tragic and depressing way. And as I say that, because Venus in fall and Virgo, I definitely do see the beauty of tragedy, the beauty of being able to empathize with people to the extent that when they suffer, you feel pain, that is a beautiful thing, actually. That is social harmony. It's, you know, it's injury to the organism is injury to all of it, right? Even if it's just, you know, I guess what I'm saying is an injury to your arm hurts all of you, right? It's something that all of you gets to experience, even though the focus point is, you know, specific. And I do think that's a beautiful point of connection. And I do think that having, you know, artwork, if, for example, that speaks to that tragedy, to that experience, is cathartic and helpful and connects us and reminds us why we're here. But it is depressing. It's depressing that there is so much injury in the world to suffer and to feel, whether it's happening to you and or also happening to others, usually both at the same time in different ways. I don't know. I've always been a big fan of tragedies, like narratively, not obviously not in real life, but like tragic poetry or tragic stories, dramas, that kind of thing. Because I do feel like we all know what it is to suffer. We don't all suffer in the same way at the same time, but it's all, you know, suffering is relative. So if you've experienced the most pain that you've ever felt in your life today, it doesn't matter if someone else has experienced more pain than that in the spectrum of their life. Like for you, that is the worst pain you've ever experienced, and that is sad and worthy of mourning and of feeling, right? Of empathizing and sympathizing with. So I don't, in a way, like tragedy connects us just as much as joy and love and beauty and harmony do, right? Because we know what it's like to lose people we care about. We know what it's like to fight with people we care about. We know what it's like to, you know, to drift apart from friends that we once held dear. Those are very common human experiences, and they can be used to unite us in favor of what it is we're here for, right? Which I do think is to experience the collective awe and wonder and beauty of the world and of the ways that that connects us to each other. I think if we didn't have that ability, life would be meaningless. If we could not appreciate beauty, if we could not connect to each other, if we didn't have awe and wonder, if we knew how everything worked and we took it for granted, like what kind of life would that be? So I don't know. It's bittersweet, but there is sweetness to it, I guess is what I'm saying. Still though, I don't know. Sometimes you gotta wonder. It's hard to have that perspective all the time. It really is, because it's suffering is hard to watch. It's hard to experience. Anyway, but yeah. So, you know, communicate with, protect, and love. This is more protect, love, feel. The people who are important to you, who uplift you, who make you feel like you're connected to something bigger than yourself, whose love for them inspires action beyond just your own experience of it, right? Like when I think about how much I love my children, my daughter and my son, I think it's beyond me. Like it's a love that permeates outwards from me. Like I can't contain it. And I think that we all have people in our lives, and not even just people, like people, animals, places, situations, concepts that like bring that sense of like, you know, all encompassing love and wonder and affection. Like for me, tarot is kind of one of those spaces. Like I love it. You know, every time that I encounter something like this, I'm just like, oh, wow, we are truly connected to something beyond ourselves. That's amazing. I don't know and you know, having pattern does not necessarily indicate intelligence. You can have a pattern of forces that are not intelligent, but it is meaningful. And I do feel fundamentally that one of humans' key roles in the universe is, if not to bestow meaning, then to appreciate meaning, to find meaning. It doesn't really matter if it's intrinsically there, because we create it, and what we create is real. So I don't know. It could be, and I'm not saying it's not. There could be, you know, and it's hard to, because my definition of intelligence is much wider than I think conventionally is used. I think rocks have a type of intelligence. I think, you know, maggots have a type of intelligence, and dogs and parrots and your home and the essence of everything, right? I think there's different ways to interact with the world, and there's human consciousness, but I think there are other points of consciousness that connect us. Anyway, so just some food for thought. Yeah, so keep an eye on the 7th, because 7th to 8th, that's eclipse. Keep an eye on the 22nd, because that's Mars going into Scorpio. And always keep an eye on Cancer in your chart. You should always keep an eye on Cancer. No, but really keep an eye on what Cancer is doing in your chart right now, because Jupiter is there and he's exalted. And even though there are other forces that are, you know, making things difficult, there is something that he's doing there. A lot of the time I've come to know lately, that Jupiter in his exaltation in Cancer is sometimes about mitigating the harm that the malefics are doing or that other forces are doing than it is bringing lots of good. But there is still good that comes out of that, right? It's noticing like the ways that we care and nurture what is important and what is vulnerable and valuable. I just recently released a Canthus and Crow video for the Mercury ruled decan of Cancer, aka the Three of Cups. So if you're interested in finding more about what that means, the Mercury ruled decan of Cancer, where Jupiter is currently, then you can head over to my Patreon and watch it. I think it is public now. I don't remember when I said it to be public. If it's not public now, it will be public soon. Anyway, okay, so that's all I have for today. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later. Oh, I should mention, I have another live stream, a Patreon live stream, the last Friday of the month, which this month is going to be the 26th. So September 26th, we're going to have a Patreon exclusive live stream at 10 o'clock in the evening, Pacific time. I'm going to set a timer and not forget. I am thinking about moving Friday's lives over to Monday, only because I'm curious about doing more things with the perspective of the moon, but we'll worry about that some other time. So the 26th is the next Patreon exclusive live. So if you guys can make it, I would really appreciate it. And if not, then we'll just do this again. So thanks. See you later. Bye.